Good afternoon or morning, guys. Well, maybe not morning anymore, wherever you guys are joining us from today. Welcome to our vendor presentation by SPARXiQ. Couple of things that I need to let you guys know. You are muted. You will be muted throughout the whole entire session. We will have time for questions and answers at the end. At that time, you can either raise your hand, which you can find in your control panel. It's just a little picture of a hand. If you click on that, I can unmute you and you can ask your question directly, or you could type it into the questions box and I will read those off for you. David, can you just go to that second slide for me, please?
Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to read this for you because I'm sure you guys have seen this before. We just like to tell you that these presentations are part of our effort to provide you with a valuable service. If you like what you see today, it's your responsibility to contact the vendor directly because we never give out any of your information prior to the session. All right, that's all I need to let you guys know. So I'm going to let them go ahead and get started. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne, and welcome to everyone. This is David Bauders. I'm the founder and CEO of SPARXiQ. Some of you may have known us in the past as Strategic Pricing Associates. We rebranded a couple of years ago. I'm joined today by Marshall Lair, who's a customer success manager at SPARXiQ, and today we're going to be talking about pro pricing tips to help you get the most out of your Eclipse ERP. So just a little bit of background on why is pricing so challenging for distributors. It really comes down to, at its root, the complexity of the markets that we serve. So a typical distributor has thousands of customers, thousands of products, even tens of thousands of SKUs, and they may be selling across different verticals like residential contractors, commercial contractors, industrial customers, all of these different types of verticals that customers are in. And they may be trying to coordinate pricing across different branches, across large sales forces where the sales teams have been empowered to set prices. So all of this adds up to a vast amount of complexity in distribution, and that's really one of the major challenges for companies trying to both be competitive but also profitable in the marketplace. And today, with an unprecedented rate of both the magnitude and frequency of vendor cost increases, that's made pricing an even bigger challenge for many distributors. So SPARXiQ has been now working with Epicor since 2007, over 15 years, and we've built in very important tools into Epicor ERP systems to help distributors master this complexity. And really the goal is to be able to simplify the maintenance of pricing while also improving how precise and how profitable these pricing matrices or customer-specific pricing recommendations can be. So it is simplified in terms of functionality. It rides native within Epicor Eclipse, and it provides dynamic, intelligent pricing recommendations all the way down to the SKU level while maintaining an easy-to-manage customer and product segmentation to be able to get the benefits of granular pricing without overwhelming complexity. There are also some important guardrails that are built in to improve margins and prevent destructive low margin business from creeping into the system. There's override management tools as well as important vendor cost recovery tools that are built directly into the Epicor SPARXiQ strategic pricing module. In addition, this has become a really important topic in the last 12 months. There are important freight recovery tools that are built into this module that help distributors to turn their freight from a cost center into a profit center. And with freight rates roughly doubling over the last 12 to 18 months, this is a good time for distributors not only to address product pricing, but also how they price their freight to their customers. And best of all of these tools have been simplified in terms of push button import and export of data to and from SPARXiQ. So we're going to go through a series of pro tips. SPARXiQ has now worked with well over 400 distribution companies, and we do see some patterns across these companies that will be useful to anybody trying to master pricing in their Eclipse system. And we really start off with a general observation, which is that the companies who are most successful managing pricing don't treat it as a low-level activity. They treat it as a top-down company-wide function. That means they engage all of the key stakeholders who need to be involved in this, whether it's the IT manager or pricing manager. Yeah, of course, those folks have to be in. their pricing initiative, but without the sales leadership team and finance and even purchasing being integrated into the team, they usually don't get the types of adoption that they're hoping for. And so SPARXiQ has really spent a lot of time helping companies to understand how to build a robust pricing committee that can truly implement and sustain the gains from pricing. But it really starts with a top level CEO, head of sales type of commitment to making progress on pricing. And without that, it's very difficult to get the sales teams to adopt and stick to the tools. The second big tip that we have is really understanding the importance of customer specific pricing. Lots of companies are letting their sales reps on a daily basis create these CSPs, which are sometimes thought of as being like contracts, whether they're legal contracts or not. They're commitments of specific products at specific prices to a particular end customer. And for a lot of companies, they really haven't organized their pricing appropriately between their matrix pricing on the one hand and their customer specific pricing on the other hand. And if you want to be successful, you really have to understand and embrace the role of customer specific pricing, but you also have to manage it, because what happens over time, if sales reps keep adding products week after week, month after month into the CSP structures and nobody's maintaining it, over time that can create some really difficult challenges in terms of the amount of maintenance that's required. So it's really important to understand from the customer's market basket, what are the products that should be in the CSP versus the products that should flow through to matrices. One of the keys to maintaining this effectively is making sure that the records within the CSP are set up as either discount or margin factors rather than fixed net prices, because when vendor cost increases come through, if they've been set up as fixed nets, then you have to go back and fix all of them, find them and fix them. Whereas if they're expressed as discounts or margins, then anytime the list price or the cost basis changes, then you'll be able to pass those increases through in a faster and a more robust way. Also, it's important to set expiration dates. This is what prompts the sellers to make sure that they've got the right products and that they're pruning out products that shouldn't be in there and adjusting the factors over the course of the customer life cycle. So these expiration dates become really important, and don't make them 12/31/99. That's basically setting them up to last forever. You want to make sure that these CSPs have the right expiration dates, typically 6 or 12 months. So
yeah,
make
David,
sure that
I'm sorry. I was going to say on that real quick. I mean, within Eclipse, I feel like, managing customer specific pricing, it's a huge opportunity. And to your point, it gets set and then forgotten about. But you need a trigger to manage that. So to your point, with the setting an expiration date, you can go in and build a report that gives you 60 days out. This is what's gonna expire, so that the individual sales reps have plenty of time. They'll get a reminder at 60 days. They'll get a reminder at 30 days. These are the matrix that are going to expire, and then it provides that trigger to actually go through and review those, because there's so much lost opportunity here. You're promised some volume, you set up this deal, it never comes through, but the pricing never gets expired or adjusted.
Yeah, that's right. And this is, really a lot of companies have lost control over their CSPs. The salespeople understand that to get around the matrices, if they don't want to override them, they need to set up a CSP. And so what should have been, a managed account with managed pricing turns into basically a black hole. And this failure to review and to prune and to update the CSP records is one of the major profit leakage points for a lot of companies. And so we do recommend a regular review process. We need to train the sales teams that there are periodic lists of accounts that are going to need to be reviewed. And we need to review the performance of each account with the different products that are in the CSP to make sure that they're generating the expected results, or else they should perhaps be taken out. So if you think about where do you use CSPs, this is where it becomes so important to segment your customer base and segment the product set. So generally speaking, if you think of the different customer sizes that you serve, you're going to have your medium, large, and huge accounts where they do enough business. They're assigned accounts with the sales rep, and you have good management and visibility of them. And then if you think about the product families that you want to be in there, from very high to very low visibility, it's really the medium, high, and very high visibility product families. So this is really where the CSPs should be carved out, and then you can see the balance of the pricing for the tiny and small accounts with the low visibility cell groups. Those are generally more appropriately priced using matrices. So just defining where is CSP appropriate and building a review process for it is really important. And a lot of companies struggle with adoption of their pricing matrices because they haven't first built the CSP layer that helps address the most sensitive customers and products in the marketplace. The third tip is really having the right customer segmentation. And so often we see companies that just have 3 customer types. They've got small, medium, and huge, or they've got 3 columns of pricing, which is way too few in terms of getting the precise types of pricing that you're looking for in your business. So we like to really focus on how can a company have the right level of customer segmentation that will support matrix adoption with their customer base. So we know that customers can vary quite a bit. They can have very different products that they buy from you, different ways of doing business, different cost to serve. There's a lot of important differences from customer type to customer type. So it's really important to really understand who are the core customer segments that you sell to, and how do you start to really define the right level of granularity. Marshall, do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the customer segmentation is something that we talk to a lot of our clients about. And I feel like in many cases, there's so many segments, and it really comes into play in 2 places. Why it's really important. Number one, if you just have a ton of different customer segments, it creates a lot of maintenance. There's so many individual matrix that you have to maintain. So you don't want to create this huge maintenance overflow. But number 2, especially if you're using analytics to come up with pricing targets, generally speaking, the more data points you have to analyze to come up with pricing, the better. So if you have several different customer types, then the amount of data points you have in each one of those buckets really gets diminished, and then the quality of the recommendations can suffer. So so you want to keep as few as possible, but no more than you actually need, right? If you have customers that buy similarly, even if they serve different or have different specialties, as long as they value and buy products the same, you should group them together. That cuts down on the maintenance, but also the quality of your analytics as you group those together. It's really key for us and what we do.
Yeah, I'd say, broadly speaking, for companies, let's say under $100 million in revenue, you're going to end up with probably 3 to 5 major customer types that you sell to. And within those, you might have 5 sizes. But make sure you get to the right level of granularity. As Marshall said, it's always a trade-off between having enough data to arrive at valid recommendations and having the right level of granularity or specificity. So for most companies, I'd say if you're under 100 million, 3 to 5 major customer types, and then size tiering within them. The fourth tip is really one size does not fit all. This idea of peanut butter pricing and treating all customers the same is a big margin leakage point for most distributors. Until you start to segment your customers effectively, you're stuck with a lot of this peanut butter pricing type of behavior. So here we're showing you an example within Eclipse of how do we start to really make sure that we've defined the right customer segmentation here. You can see there's, in this case, we've got 6 major customer types, and each one has a size tiering, and we show what are the upper values in terms of purchases that are driving the size classification. So within OEM, for example, you can see from $1 up to $6 million in this example, there could be tiny customers, or you get up to, you can see how these different threshold values for OEMs, for example, would vary. Or under cash customers, obviously have very different size thresholds. They're much smaller in general. You can see how that would break out, or contractors in the next column. So we like to make it really easy within Eclipse for you to be able to designate customers either based on their actual spend or based on their potential spend. You can see it's also possible to size them using either invoice dollars or invoice quantity. Marshall, did you have any comments on this?
No, not necessarily. I think it's a good, one of the things I like to say is, not all customers are the same, and sizing helps us to make sure that, customers are not being treated the same, right? It's a lot of times there's a lot of margin leakage because what happens is all customers of that type are given the same pricing as the largest customers in that type. And generally speaking, the largest customers are, they're more demanding, they're more sensitive, and
yeah. One of the things that we see here is how this distributor has 6 major customer types. They've got 6 different sizes. So they basically have 36 different pricing levels, if you think about it that way. And one of the nice things about this is because it's organized in a simple way. Once we've tagged a customer according to their type and size, we have a very simple matrix approach to how we can treat those customers. But the most important thing is we have to differentiate. There's no reason to treat OEMs and cash customers the same, or cash customers and resellers the same. Every one of these market segments has its own products that are more sensitive or less sensitive, and they have different market baskets that need to be addressed. So if you want to be both more competitive and also more profitable, you have to get granular with your customer segmentation. The sizing is obviously important. Again, it could be based on either potential, which we want to make sure we have some hard numbers on what's driving potential. Don't leave it up to the sales reps, who will tell you every customer is huge. And then make sure that you really understand, what are the cherry picking characteristics of customers? What is their true spend potential? Because their actual invoice history will not reflect their entire market basket. It'll just be what they bought from you. So this is where it becomes really important to stratify them correctly. Tip number 5 is using customer size as a version of cost to serve. Now, a lot of companies have thought about using cost to serve and have opinions about how costs are driven in their business, incurred by different types of customers. Probably one of the most basic ones is being able to understand that small customers, broadly speaking, have a much higher cost to serve as a percentage of revenue. So getting a 25% margin from a huge account yields very different net profit compared to getting 25% from small accounts. So that's, again, why it becomes so important to be able to use this customer segmentation to build in differentiated margin standards, because the cost to serve of the small, tiny, and very tiny customers tends to be very high. The good news is they're not as price sensitive, broadly speaking. The bad news is if you haven't segmented them out, you're going to be probably losing money. In fact, our profit GPS analytics show that up to half of small customers are actually money losing when you consider the true cost to serve. One of the ways that you can really, when you understand that you have a customer who is, let's say, slow to pay you, or uses credit card, or has other fragmented order patterns where they send you 10 different POs in order to get to a single project, things like that, is to do what we call size downsizing, which is basically moving a customer who is typically large and tagging them as a medium, which will point them to a higher pricing standard. So once you understand the value of customer segmentation, start to build out these Eclipse pricing matrices, you can start to take your most costly to serve customers and bump them down a size to recover extra margin to offset the higher cost to serve. Tip number 6 is really just like we don't want to peanut butter across customers, we also don't want to peanut butter across the line card. So if we've got 50 or 100 vendors, we've got 1,000 different cell groups, we really have to understand the market sensitivity of the different cell groups that we have. And too often when salespeople are setting up pricing, they just do peanut butter discounts, peanut butter markups, typically margins ending in 0s and 5s, discounts ending in 0s and 5s. or they're using some kind of crazy velocity-based system where it's based on the inventory turns, which of course has nothing to do with the way customers are looking at these products. So product segmentation becomes really important. And again, just like customer segmentation, we want to have enough variability that we get more competitive and we are able to extract premiums on less sensitive products, but we're also wanting to be able to not overcomplicate the management of this. And this is again where the Eclipse pricing module is so valuable, because it allows us micro level impact with a much higher level, simpler type of structure. So there is a special feature built within the Eclipse strategic pricing module that helps you to build extra margin into the cost basis of products that salespeople are using when they make their cost plus pricing decisions. We call this puffing. And puffing is really about how do we identify in a customer's market basket. As you see on the left, we might have a customer's entire market basket of products, with the most sensitive products being at the top of the market basket, and then the less sensitive tail spend at the bottom of the market basket. As we start to organize the top of the market basket into CSPs, and we start to allow matrix pricing to hit the bottom tail spend, then we can start to build small premiums into the cost basis of the product to account for the higher cost to serve and the lower price sensitivity. That way, when our sales reps put zeros and fives on their margins across the entire market basket, we deliver small premiums on the tail spend. These are typically 3%, 5%, 7%, depending on how sensitive they are, what the unit price would be. So what we're basically doing is we're creating a layer on top of the strategic cost. And you can see in this example, we might have a 50-cent premium on a $10 standard cost if it's low sensitivity. That way, when the sales rep prices at 25% markup, they're going to get an extra 63 cents of margin because we adjusted the cost basis. So this is worth a lot of money because it doesn't involve any change management with sales teams, broadly speaking, and it can deliver typically between 200 and 300 basis points of additional profit. Marshall, do you want to talk a little bit about the puffing matrices?
Yeah, and real quick on that, I was going to say also on, one of the great things about puffing, you can quickly, when we talk about customer specific pricing, a lot of times those are treated as like these formal pricing agreements. And over time, you want to ensure that you're not, you're setting up that customer specific pricing, given that those special pricing on those, A and B items, but there shouldn't really be any of that on C and D items. But even in an instance where you have a plethora of customer specific pricing, you can turn on the puffing functionality, some of that, customer specific pricing, and quickly start to pick up some of those premiums on the C and D items as you work through that. But this, and what we see here, is what we call, it's a cube factors, and there's cube factors and modifiers. So what we see on the right here is based on the sensitivity of the item. You can see core A through non-core D, and then the visibility or sensitivity of the actual cell groups. We can apply a different premium to each one of those. So on the the upper left-hand corner, those very high sensitive cell groups and core A items, we're not going to touch those. Those are we're not adding any premiums. And on the other extreme is the very low sensitivity cell groups, the non-core D items. What I like to refer to as just like low cost anonymous items. We're going to apply the max puffing percent. But one of the things we realize that the value of the item matters as well. So we have this functionality where those puff factors are modified depending upon the value of an item. An item that costs $1 is inherently less sensitive than an item that costs $100 or $1,000. So we have the modifiers that kind of throttle that puff factor up or down based on the price of an item. An item that costs $1 with a puff factor of 10% is 10 cents versus much higher volume. So that's love this functionality. And one of the things within Eclipse, I think that a lot of people don't utilize is we can set these puff factors and modifiers at specific cell groups as well. There are some cell groups that are much more sensitive, and as opposed to just not puffing those at all or excluding them completely, you could modify these puff factors to kind of throttle that puff back as opposed to just not puffing them at all.
Yeah, so one of the things that's great about this, you can see that you can actually start to make extra money on very low unit priced items, which typically would be almost impossible in a matrix system to be able to get premiums on your sub $10 items, for example. The other thing that you can do is you can start to really stratify products within a product family. So when you set up a typical Excel type of matrix, you're hitting a single product family, all the SKUs within it are getting the same markups or margins. And it's very hard for you to manage if you've got 50,000 SKUs, for example. How do you get SKU level differentiation without having 50,000 records? Well, the answer is you have to have this table that allows you to adjust the values in the matrix based on these two dimensions here, the visibility of the cell group and the SKU specific core status. So what it's giving you is fundamentally the ability to extract these small premiums at a very granular level without all of the maintenance that would normally go into that. So it gives you the best of both worlds. And there's typically, again, 200 to 300 basis points of extra margin available when you're able to hit the right SKUs with the right premiums. So SPARXiQ runs analytics against your customers' market baskets, their sales history, over 12 different variables that predict from a buyer's perspective how sensitive they'll be on those products. So we look at the order sizes, the repeatability, how much volume do they buy of it, what's the frequency of it, what's the relative cost to serve, what's the variability. There's over a dozen of these different attributes, and we evaluate each and every customer's market basket to be able to profile the relative sensitivity of each of the products they buy. We then look across groups of customers, either by type or across the entire population of customers, to generate an overall sensitivity rating. And this has a 4-decimal coreness rating, which further improves the precision of these price factors that get applied. So the 8th tip has to do with strategically pricing non-stock items. And a lot of distributors have really missed the opportunity to make more money with their non-stock items. So first of all, not all non-stocks are created equal, and nor should they be priced equally. In fact, a lot of companies have sort of written off their non-stocks as not being a good pricing opportunity. But the highest performing companies in the marketplace still see what the potential is. When nobody carries a product in stock in the marketplace, there's no reason to exclude that from being part of your pricing program. And from the customer's perspective, all the vendors are created equal. So you should be able to, even though you don't have the same cost to serve, you should be able to start managing those prices and margins just as you would with your stocked items. So perhaps the margins won't be the same, but don't leave them out. The first starting point should always be, why can't we get the same margin if nobody else is stocking it? So make sure you keep in mind that non-stock items in many ways are much higher cost to serve when you look at the true cost of sourcing them and dealing with lower tier vendors, for example, where you may not have as good of terms of trade with those vendors. And make sure that you are getting paid properly, or they can quickly turn into a profit drain for your company. Tip number 9 is building in premiums for first-time sold items. And this is where pricing matrices often are missing their impact. So when you have product families that haven't been sold before to a particular customer group, those could be 10, 20, even 30% of revenue, depending on the business that you're in, the line of trade. And when we don't have good rules or good structures in place to handle those first-time events or one-time events, then we end up sacrificing margin. We have CSRs who are making up on the fly what the prices should be. And we treat those, we really want to treat those new items as they would be treated through similar products that are already in the pricing structure. And this is again where The Eclipse pricing module really shines as being able to treat first-time events or one-time events in a very strategic way and making sure that they don't become yet another leakage point in the pricing architecture. And the last point I alluded to earlier, which is the importance of freight. For a typical wholesale distributor, their freight costs will typically be 3 to 4% of revenue. This in an industry where operating profit is often only 4%. And the average distributor often recovers only about 70% of their inbound and outbound freight costs. The best performers range between 100 and 150%. So typical implementation of a freight pricing module, which is included in the Eclipse tools here, can help you to improve by 30% or more of your freight cost. And typically, again, if that's 4% of revenue, that would give you 30% of that would be 120 basis points or 1.2 margin points. Not bad for a company that only makes 4. They can go up to 5.2. So freight really needs to become a profit center, and fundamentally with freight costs going up because of fuel, because of supply chain constraints and extended lead times, multiple handling points, all of that, these are driving up the freight costs for distributors. So once again, just like with product pricing, SPARXiQ and Epicor have worked together to build a really tight module here that helps you to differentiate how you recover freight from your customers based on many of the same factors we used for product pricing: the visibility of the cell group, sensitivity, core A to non-core D of the SKUs that are being sold. We can modify up or down based on the freight value. We can also differentiate it by customer type and size. So just as we said before, peanut butter pricing really doesn't work for most companies. If you can start to manage this more effectively, you're going to make a lot more money. Again, typically you can improve your freight recovery by 30% or more. Marshall, any thoughts on that?
No, I don't have much to add there. I really like the freight sensitivity factors there by type and size, because to kind of go back to what you touched on the previous slide, you can use that as a cost to serve premium, right? As a way to add just a little bit more to the freight based on the cost to serve of that customer. A lot of times especially when we're talking about freight, when we talk about the size or the sensitivity, we really kind of equate that to cost to serve. And those smaller customers, less sensitive, higher cost to serve, it's a way to capture a little bit of a premium in a fairly seamless way.
Yeah, for a typical distributor, it's got maybe a 20% average gross margin. That 4% that's going to freight, you're giving up practically 20% of your GP dollars to the freight black hole. So if you can start to recover that more efficiently, that goes from being a net loser to actually being a profit center. And that's worth a lot of money to distribution today. So as you think about all the things we've been talking about, we were focused on kind of the pro tips to help you improve pricing, to make sure you're passing through vendor cost increases. A lot of it has to do with setting up structures in the most granular, but also the most sustainable way, whether it's CSPs or matrices. Getting your customer segmentation and product segmentation right is the foundation of a successful pricing journey. Obviously, analytics are important. Don't start putting average values, average margins into your pricing matrices. That just sets you up for margin degradation. When your target is the average and your sales teams are discounting off of that, you're going to end up with lower average sell prices going forward. So you really need to have expert analytics if you want to drive adoption. But also the functionality that's within the ERP system. If you're just using the base level Eclipse functionality, you're missing out on important opportunities to sharpen the impact, to sharpen your competitiveness, and to simplify the price management while also driving better business outcomes, whether it's the low sensitivity products, the low unit priced items, the higher cost to serve tiny and small customers, freight recovery. These tools that are built into the strategic pricing module drive big gains in profitability and help to improve adoption by sales teams. These tools also provide override controls and guardrails to help you to make sure that when sellers do override, that you're maintaining appropriate standards of profitability. And as you start to deploy these types of tools and systems, you're ultimately improving the culture of pricing in your business. So this is a really important journey. It's one of the most important profit levers for distributors. Make sure you've got the tools to be successful. Make sure you've got a partner who can help you. So we've been working with Epicor now for over 14 years, helping to really provide the best functionality that leverages best practices from hundreds of distributors to make it easy for anybody who's working in Eclipse to achieve the business impact that they need to. Arguably, you can't succeed in pricing today if you haven't mastered, you can't succeed in distribution today if you haven't mastered your pricing architecture. So make sure that you treat your Eclipse as a for-profit ERP system. Make sure you activate the strategic pricing module, get the analytics to help you be successful. You'll find that it makes you a healthier company. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to questions and see what we got here. Suzanne.
All right, great. Yep, just a reminder, you guys can either raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can type your question into the questions box and I'll read it off for you. So the first question I have, does the module do anything to make it easier to keep up with the cost increases from our suppliers?
Oh my goodness, yes it does. That's probably one of the most important attributes, is that you can very quickly, as you get a cost increase, pass it through to the vendor. And I'll just flip back here to the slide where we showed how we're able to do that. So what happens is when a vendor cost increase comes through, when we set up these tables effectively, as soon as the vendor cost increase comes through, the system is automatically repricing it because we've already built factors off of the cost basis. The cost increases are already flowing through. But equally importantly, for companies that have, let's say, want to make a little bit more money on their vendor cost increases, maybe because they have long lead times, very scarce availability, you can actually move them from one row to another within this table to be able to extract more premium. You could take a high visibility product family that's going through, let's say, supply side constraints, and you can move it down to medium. You'll start getting the extra bump in the margin points that you see there. So this is a really important capability right now, particularly with long lead times and increasing frequency of vendor cost increases. Next question.
Okay. Do you recommend restricting reps' ability to override price?
Absolutely. Now we know that sellers are facing, pressure in the marketplace, although certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, where in-stock availability was the most important attribute customers were looking for. Sales reps should have been able to wean themselves off of overrides, and instead we see a lot of companies, their overrides went unchanged. Customers didn't have a lot of choices. There was a lack of availability, stock availability, yet sales reps kept on overriding like it was 2018. So being able to start to block some of that is really important. And so there are controls directly within the Epicor SPARXiQ pricing module that will help you to set specific guardrails around those behaviors. And with, let's say, in the medium, low, or very low sensitivity product families, we may want to block overrides altogether. Or for those that are higher in visibility, we can start to provide some discretion to the sales rep, but really put limits on it, set minimum margin values, set minimum maximum discount values, things like that.
All right, so the last question I have typed in, does the Epicor module make it easier to maintain pricing libraries?
Yeah, again, it's really coming down to the ability to treat SKUs differently, as you're seeing here on this matrix, while maintaining just cell group level pricing factors. So a typical company may have, let's say, 1,000 cell groups. That means each of their pricing libraries, their pricing matrices, would have 1,000 records. But on the other hand, they have 50,000 SKUs, and if they didn't have this type of functionality, each of their libraries would have to have 50,000 records if they wanted to have SKU level differences. What this tool allows you to do is to quickly and efficiently have the benefits of the cell group level pricing maintenance while achieving the granularity and specificity of item level impact. And again, that's typically worth 200 to 300 basis points, being able to not treat everything within a family the same and extract small premiums on the B, C, and D items. So yes, it's designed for exactly that use case, to be able to simplify, but also to improve business impact.
All right, that was the last question I had.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Suzanne, and thank Marshall for attending. And anybody out there who wants to learn more about the Epicor SPARXiQ strategic pricing module, reach out to us. We're happy to chat and explore and help you to turn pricing into an engine of profitability and growth for your company. So thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
All right.